What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best Lunging Strike Barbarian build in Diablo 4 new season. So thanks to the recent changes and powerful new uniques, Lunging Strike is now finally a viable endgame build. You'll be dashing and smashing through the packs of demons and keeping your cooldowns rolling almost 24/7. The big turning point for this build is with the hooves of the Mountain God, which is a unique that transforms the Lunging Strike into a cleaving AoV monster. Combine this with the Rage of the Hero God resets, Breath of the Berserker's uptime, and some key runes and the gear choices, and this build becomes fast, fun, and surprisingly tanky. And speaking of the Rage Harrogat, this synergy is one of the reasons that this build is so smooth to play. With the Lunging Strike applying bleed and cleaving in AoV, you're constantly resetting cooldowns and never running dry on utility. In the early game, you'll rely a bit more on the Earthquake support thanks to the Earthquake aspect, which gives Lunging Strike a 120% damage multiplier whenever you're standing in one. But later on, once your uniques are online, Lunging Strike becomes an unstoppable machine with minimal downtime. Overall, this build got a constant uptime on the shouts like the Rallying Cry, War Cry, and the Challenging Shout. Wrath of the Berserker basically never drops, so your berserking window is 100% reliable. And then Lunging Strike itself doubles as a mobility skill, by letting you zip around without relying solely on the leap or the charge. And the best of all, this build is super easy to play with insane damage numbers. And remember, if you wanna check this build, look up the best items, the skill trees, and power building, then check my link in the description. And before we continue, thanks to U4GM. They are a pro website that provides Diablo 4 services like cheap gold with fast delivery and pro carry runs, as well as unique and legendary items. They also have more than 17,000 comments on Trustpilot, and this website is really worth a try. So make sure to use my discount code KAID for extra 6% off. So let's start with the core skills. The Lunging Strike is our bread and butter. With Battle Lunging Strike, each stab will apply bleed, by letting us reliably proc the Rage of the Hero God. This is what unlocks the build's infinite uptime potential. You're always getting cooldown resets on your shouts and the Wrath of the Berserker. Then Frenzy comes in through the dual threat perk by adding a second basic skill. It may sound small, but the Frenzy ramps up attack speed, adds movement speed, and gives damage reduction with the Combat Frenzy. That bonus survivability and the tempo makes the kit feel smoother. Then Rallying Cry will provide Unstoppable, Fortify, and the Fury generation. It's your get moving again button when crowd control treads will lock you down and keep your resources topped off. Then War Cry will add a big burst of multiplicative damage and grant berserking. It's not your main DPS booster, but it makes the fights flow faster and synergize very well with the Wrath's uptime. Then Challenging Shout is your survival skill by giving massive damage reduction. When content gets tough, this keeps you on your feet and tanking through the chaos. And finally, we have the Wrath of Berserker. With Rage of the Hero God resets, you can achieve now permanent Wrath uptime, meaning that you're always berserking, always unstoppable, and always shredding enemies at the maxed efficiency. And then for our weapon setup, the two-handed mace is the star. Its high base damage synergizes with the passives like Develop and the heavy-handed, and the expertise bonus will add 50% extra damage. And in the technique slot, we lock in the two-handed axe. This grants 10% bonus damage against vulnerable enemies. Because Lunging Strike applies bleed and has great vulnerability uptime from the affixes and the items like the Fist of Fate, so this damage bonus is basically permanent. Next up we have gear, and the most important unique here is the Hooves of the Mountain God, which turns Lunging Strike into a cleaving AoV skill and allows it to proc the Rage of the Hero God in the group situations. Without this, the build doesn't really function at the full power. Next up is the Ring of the Starless Skies. It provides massive damage multiplier, resource cost reduction, crit chance, and the attack speed. Lunging Strike maintains 100% uptime on this multiplier, making it one of the strongest possible ring choices. Then there's the Grandfather. Not only does it add a significant damage boost, but increased maximum fury synergizes beautifully with the Ramaladadin's magnum opus, and even adaptility. The all-stat roll contributes to the strength scaling, crit chance, and resistances, which help to round out our survivability. And then the rest of your gear should focus on the critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, and the attack speed, basic skill multipliers, and of course enough armor and resistances to survive the endgame scaling. And then finally, I recommend to keep in your rotation consumables like Elixir of Resourcefulness 2, Soothing Spices, and Red the Mine Buzz. Then for the runes, the top tier combo is money plus the zing. Because Lunging Strike attacks so quickly, so the setup reliably procs overpower every couple of seconds, turning every basic strike into a massive hit. Then second best combo is Puck plus the tech, which generates earthquakes that synergize with the earthquakes aspect for 120% damage multiplier. This is what pushes your single target and AoE numbers into the catosphere. And on top of it we have alternatives like Seer for offering generation, or Gar to help cap crit chance are fine while gearing. But long term you want money and Zen plus the Puck and the tech. Next up we have Chaos perks, and for our build we want to go with the dual thread first. This perk is essential because it unlocks the frenzy as a secondary basic. On paper it doesn't sound insane, but in practice it's huge. It adds attack speed, ramps up your DPS quickly, and gives extra survivability through the combat frenzy damage reduction and the movement speed. Next, accelerating chaos will help to trim cooldowns even further. It will make shout cycle back in seconds, Wrath of the Berserker never falls off, and you keep the whole machine running without any downtime. Then we take Mirrored Guard. On its own, it's a sturdy defensive perk, but the real power is how it ties into our unique. By lowering your health pool into that danger zone, it allows you to keep a Beast Cornered active at all times. And speaking of our unique, a Beast Cornered is the big payoff. It gives us a flat 100% damage multiplier and 25% damage reduction, and then for the gem setup we use runes in both of our weapons. Then we use rubies in the armor for maximum life, and diamonds in the amulet and the rings for the extra resistances. Overall, these gems are simple but very effective. Then next we have our skill tree, and it's built around making your basic attack a true endgame damage dealer. We will start by fully investing into the battling Lunging Strike. That bleed is essential for proccing Rage of the Hero God and creating constant cooldown resets. With those resets you can maintain a near constant uptime on Rallying Cry, War Cry, Challenging Shouts, and the Wrath of the Berserker. Frenzy through the dual threads will add depth. By upgrading to that combat frenzy, every frenzy will give us damage reduction and movement speed, which means that you can dive headfirst into the enemy groups and shrug off punishment while ramping up your tempo. Then Rallying Cry is upgraded to the Fury generation and the Fortify, which ensures our defensive scaling into the higher content. Then War Cry is maxed to provide multiplicative damage and the Berserker's uptime, while Challenging Shout is heavily invested into, because it's your panic button and the safety net in the high nightmare tiers. And now finally, the Wrath of the Berserker is fully maxed. Between the Wrath's inherent multipliers and the Rage of the Hero God resets, you have a permanent damage steroid that stacks on top of your already insane multipliers. Next up we have the Paragon board, and we start with Warbringer's board, which shores up the Fury sustain so you never stall out. From there we pivot into the Decimator to take the advantage of the vulnerable uptime. This synergizes beautifully with a two-handed technique. Then the Blood Rage board reinforces the bleed scaling, which in return keeps the Rage of the Hero God triggered, while Bone Keeper adds a huge value to the two-handed mace, with multipliers to the overpower and heavy-handed synergy. Then finally the Carnage will seal the package by granting attack speed and the Berserker scaling. That makes the Lunging Strike feel blistering fast. And then as for your glyphs, you want to prioritize the Wrath for the huge basic skill and the core skill scaling, then Challenger for the bonus damage against elites, Undaunted for scaling damage with the Fortify, which pairs perfectly with the Rallying Cry's uptime, then Revenge to juice your offense further, and then Marshal to reduce cooldowns and make sure that your shouts feel truly permanent. Next, let's talk about Mercenaries. Your primary pick is the Rocher. His passive, the Rocher's Aegis, will give you a huge boost to resistances, which makes it so much easier to cap them in the Torment. This is important because the Lunging Strike Barb wants to stack offense on the gear, crit, one ability damage and the attack speed, and not wasting slots chasing defensive rolls. Rocher will essentially patch all of these weaknesses for you. And then for your reinforcement, go with the Altkin. His Field of the Languish is a periodic area that reduces enemy damage output. It may not look flashy, but it makes a massive difference in survivability during the pit pushes or very high nightmare dungeon tiers. When things get hectic, that layer of mitigation is often the difference between surviving a one-shot or not. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. You want to start by using your shouts, so Rallying Cry, War Cry and the Challenging Shout, whenever they're off cooldown. With the Rage of the Hero God consistently proccing, you will rarely find yourself fading. Then cast Wrath of the Berserker before the buff drops, and because of your resets you can maintain a near permanent uptime. The Wrath is also tactical, so you can use it to pull enemies in and group them for the cleaves. Then engage by dashing with the Lunging Strike into the center of a pack. Thanks to the hooves of the Mountain God, Lunging Strike will cleave around your target, so aiming for the middle ensures the maximum AoE damage. And then from here it's simple, just stab, stab and stab. Weave in the frenzy for the ramped attack speed when you need it, but your main focus is spamming Lunging Strike to keep the engage running. Between the uptime on the buffs, the infinite route window and the cleaving stabs, the build feels like an unstoppable whirlwind of motion.